I really appreciate the opportunity to get to speak to you today. Like she said, my name is Leon Keener. I'm the Executive Director of the Iowa Alliance for Arts Education. This organization was founded in 1988. And the purpose of this organization really came about during the farm crisis at that time, where a lot of schools were cutting fine arts programs. So we had some very visionary leaders in our state who realized that if we could speak together with a unified voice, our voice would be much more powerful. So next slide, please. The main initiatives of the Iowa Alliance, we focus on three things: our local, state, and national advocacy, professional development of fine arts teachers, and mentorship for fine arts teachers. But today we're going to be focusing specifically on our advocacy efforts. Next slide. What we're going to look at is just 6 points of effective advocacy, whether this would be at the local, the state, or the national level, and speaking with all kinds of decision makers. This would be with local school boards, community leaders, statewide leaders, and also people in Washington, D.C. So let's go on to the next slide, and we're going to move right along. In the advocacy work, since my background is in education, it was I had a steep learning curve really to go in and learn exactly how to be an effective advocate. So these are just 6 points that I think help summarize, my advocacy journey. The first one, is where I think artists, art educators, people who are involved in arts and culture it's just natural to us. We are very passionate about what we do. And I think that is the most important thing. But I think coming on to the second bullet point, that we all have those compelling story about the importance of the arts or what we're advocating for, but it's going through and putting the facts behind it. So I think it's the facts plus that compelling story that really make the difference. So whether you're talking to a principal, a city council, a mayor, an arts council, someone at your local or your state legislature, or even your national representatives and senators, it's going through and being able to say, this is my story, and here are the facts that back it up. And then the other thing too is doing your research and then tailoring your story to fit who you're talking to. So for example, if I'm talking to a principal or a superintendent, I need to talk like an administrator. If I'm talking to a mayor, or if I'm talking to someone who's, I can talk about economic development or how arts and culture are going to improve our community. If I'm talking to the chair of an appropriations committee at the state or national level, I'm going to talk about the effectiveness and how cost-effective things are, how things are for them. So it's one of those things you need to do your research. For example, we were at our state capitol in Des Moines. Our advocacy day for our Iowa Alliance is in January. For our Iowa Cultural Coalition is in February. So as we were talking to legislators, we would go through and do our research to know what they are interested in, what committees they serve on, and really what makes them tick. So if we were talking to a legislator that had a special needs child or whatever, and that we knew, we could go in and talk about the important things about this, or see what their voting record is and kind of see where they fit. So I think it's really important that we do that research so that we can tailor the story to fit the person we're talking to. Another thing we need to do, and I think, is frame our message in a positive manner. I think sometimes we in arts education and arts and culture kind of go to the woe is me type thing. And to me, one thing I've learned, if I can frame things positively, if I can talk about the arts and economic development, the arts and positive student environment for students, the arts and effectiveness on building strong communities, et cetera, you get the idea. Because that's something we feel very passionate about, but we can say that arts and culture reaches such a wide array of issues for legislators and decision makers. If we can frame all of that in a positive manner, I think we're going to get farther. The next bullet point I think is super important. I think everything is built on relationships. and it's built on positive relationships. When I work with beginning teachers, I talk about this and building an effective relationship, a positive relationship with other staff members, with their administrators, with the school board, et cetera, et cetera. So it's one of those things is, attending local legislative forum. If you can't go to your state capitol and advocate, you certainly, when they come into your communities, connect with them. Go to the city council meeting, talk to your mayor, talk to your local arts council, all of those things where they build that relationship with decision makers. And I think that is super, super important because everything that we do is built on that relationship. And coming in with that positive message each time is going to help build that relationship stronger. The last bullet point is have a consistent message. Now, there'll be different issues that are going to make a difference as we go over time, but have this consistent message. When we work with the Iowa Alliance for Arts Education, we really believe strongly, along with the Arts Education Partnership, that fine arts education builds success in school, success in work, and success in life. We can strongly connect to those three things. When I work with the Iowa Cultural Coalition, our three pillars are arts and culture, attract and retain talent in our communities. They promote tourism and economic development, and they help us build strong communities. So as we're going through and I'm framing my message, I'm passionate about my message, I have the facts to back it up. I tailor my story to fit who I'm talking to. I talk about arts education and arts and culture in a positive way in what it can do. I build relationships with my decision makers so they will listen to me consistently, and then also having that consistent message. And then on to my next slide. And then what are some things that we can do? I think out of these, I think some really important things is we need to read, listen, and stay informed. And that's tricky to do, but that's where like advocacy organizations really can help you do that. It's important to get involved. Decisions are made by people who show up. The next bullet point, and this we've learned a lot in my advocacy work, sometimes you have to take on that unwinnable fight because it's going to change the conversation. And most importantly, it can plant that seed for future advocacy efforts. You may not win all the time, but if you come in and you know that you can change the discussion and the topic, how things are discussed, that is going to pay off in the future. Make sure you start small. Don't be afraid to start, you start something small and build from there. We talked about building connections. And I think the other thing too is when it all is said and done, remember the compelling why. Why do we do what we do? And I think that is going to help us keep, be strong advocates over a long period of time. Thank you so much. And I know we'll have some questions about this later on, but that was just a quick overview of some bullet points of what I think, what I have learned in my work and being as an advocate for arts education and arts and culture. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. And I think we can go on to the next speaker.
Awesome. Thank you, Leon. And again, to your point that you just made, you did give some really excellent overarching points. So I will have our next speaker join. Her name is Rachel McGrain. She serves as Executive Director of the Arts Education in Maryland Schools organization. Rachel, take it away.
Rachel, you're
Sorry
muted.
about that. My bad. I turned my video on and I forgot to turn my microphone on. Good afternoon. My name is Rachel McGrain. And as Tara said, thank you, Tara, for the introduction. Thank you, Leon, for your great presentation. I am the Executive Director at Arts Education in Maryland Schools, also known as AIMS. We are a statewide organization working to ensure that all students in Maryland have access to robust arts education. There are a lot of ways to get involved on the state and local level, both as an organization like AIMS and as an individual advocate in your community. A lot of these opportunities happen year-round and may or may not involve legislative action. Leon alluded to this a little bit. At the school and district level, principals, district leaders, Board of Education members are constantly paying attention to what their communities value, so it's important to show up. You can attend your school's performances and exhibits and invite decision makers to those events, and then follow up with those people to make sure they know how much you value those experiences. So that's all part of the relationship building piece, making sure that folks are paying attention and they can actually see that passion. They can see what's going on in their communities, in their schools year round, not just when decisions are happening. Also, when budgeting decisions are happening, this often centers around staffing, but in practice can determine if an arts program will have the means to continue or not. And that typically starts in the fall and continues throughout the spring. Meetings are typically held at individual schools, school budget meetings held by principals, and also at district-wide at Board of Education meetings. Whether or not an arts program is in jeopardy, it's important to show up and make sure that those decision makers know that you value the arts and want to continue or increase support for arts programming in your school and in your community. As a statewide organization, we rely on local experts on the ground to keep us in the loop when arts education needs support and advocacy in their community so that we can support those organizing efforts. We also advocate directly to the State Department of Education. So now I'm going to share an example of what that looked like over the last year for us and highlight some takeaways that you can use anytime you're addressing an issue in your community, especially through this particular example of letter writing. So March, the month that we're in right now, is Arts in Our Schools Month, which is a very exciting celebration of all things arts going on in all of our different disciplines. And so last year we used this thematic timing to send a letter to our state superintendent, inviting him to celebrate Arts in Our Schools Month by addressing some major issues that we had identified in arts education throughout the state. So the first thing was this thematic timing. Then we didn't go at it alone. We collaborated with the Maryland Music Educators Association and the Maryland Dance, Theater, and Art Education Associations to write this letter together so that our request would be stronger and represent more educators than if we had sent it alone. We also looped in the governor and the State Board of Education to our communication with the superintendent because all of these entities are interconnected. So it's important to make sure that as many involved parties as possible are aware of what you're asking for, and you never know who might be able to push your request forward from a different angle. Finally, for that initial letter, we offered our support to help address the items that we were bringing up. Rather than pointing a finger, we said, here's some things that need to change, and we'll help make that change if invited. So as a result of this letter, we were actually invited to meet with leadership at the Department of Education to discuss our concerns. And then that started a chain of follow-up. You can see on this slide, it's kind of messy and there's arrows going all over the place because this was a long, involved process and involved lots and lots of different follow-up steps that brought us back to this point in time. So we, again, were invited to meet with leadership at the Department of Education. We then had a follow-up meeting with Department of Education staff as well. And we were actually taken up on our offer to support and give direct assistance on reinstating the state's Fine Arts Education Advisory Panel to advise the superintendent. And by the end of the school year, there was only one outstanding item left to be addressed from our initial letter. So we sent a follow-up letter in June to close out the school year, acknowledging the progress made and identifying that outstanding item. We continued communication throughout this school year, and as of last month, that final area of updating the theater certification in Maryland was completed, and so we sent one more letter closing the loop this month, last week, for Arts in Our Schools Month, sharing that all of these areas have been addressed just in time to celebrate again. So whether you're involved with a statewide organization like AIMS, or you're, for example, a parent or an artist working at the local level, you can keep these tips in mind when advocating for arts education year-round. Next slide, please. And I love me some good alliteration, so I made these in the form of 5 S's. Strategic timing. So time your communication to align with, for example, a budget cycle or a Board of Education meeting, or in this example case, a celebration like Arts in Our Schools Month or National Arts and Education Week. Stronger together. Whether it's bringing a friend to a performance or encouraging others to submit testimony, signing a joint letter or petition, the more people involved in the advocacy, the stronger the message is going to be. Spread the message. that also goes to who's on the receiving end too. Decisions are not made in silos. So I encourage you to spread the word to all the decision makers you think might be able to make a difference. Support the solution. If you're able to, offer to be part of the solution. Contribute your services, say, hey, here's an issue and I can help. If you invite me to, I'm happy to help resolve it. And then finally, say thanks and follow up. Whoever you're advocating for, whoever you're advocating to, make sure to thank them for their service, for their consideration with your requests, and also follow up to acknowledge any progress that's been made, or if progress hasn't been made, follow up to let them know that you're still paying attention. So that is all for me. Thank you to Quanice, to Tara, and the Guild for inviting me to speak. You can learn more about AIMS at our website, aims-edu.org, and on our social media at ArtsEd Maryland. This slide plus myself is our team at AIMS, and we all wish you a happy Arts in Our Schools month.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. I like this idea of going from this overview that Leon provided and then you narrowing the scope and focus of what we're discussing today and giving that amazing example of letter writing as an effective advocacy tool. So thank you again, Rachel and Leon, for your presentations. And last but definitely not least, I'm going to have Kara Armstrong come on. She serves as she serves as Midwest Trust Center Arts Education Program Director with the Johnson County Community College. So Kara, if you don't mind taking it away.
Yes, thank you, Tara. And hi, everyone. It's great to be here today. You'll see me repeat a lot of the big messages that Leon and Rachel said, but from the perspective of someone who is planning programs and working within a large performing arts center. So next slide, please. So where I work is the Midwest Trust Center, and we are a performing arts venue on the campus of a community college in a suburb outside of Kansas City on the Kansas side. The first paragraph is about our center broadly, but I'll focus in on what my work primarily is in charge of. In the Arts Ed department, we do school shows for kids on field trips, family programming on evenings and weekends, a free music series for our youngest patrons on Saturday mornings, as well as a robust teacher training initiative, which is one of the things I'll talk about here in a minute. Next slide. Okay, so this is me. It's actually an old headshot, so I've aged a little since then. I need a new headshot. But I included this slide to sort of set the groundwork for what I'm going to talk about in a minute, which is that when it comes to advocacy, I believe that it's very important to always stay rooted in who you are and what your core values are, and that these are the building blocks for your why, and you are going to be trying to convince other people to care about your why. So here are some of my roles, followed by what I consider to be my core values. And these values keep me grounded and clear when I get caught up in the chaos and difficulties of this type of work. So I'll let you read those. Those are who I am, the roles I play, and the values that keep me going in this work. And I used this little quote at the end to just kind of synthesize how you can turn your values into a brief statement of purpose that can help you guide you when you're talking to people and keep you really clear on your messaging. Next slide. Okay, so all of that was set up for what I'm going to talk about here, which is I'm going to focus on how to tell your story as a strategy in your advocacy work. And by story, I mean any aspect of your work that is meaningful to you and connects you with your core values. So telling your story is a vital part of this work, and it starts with the stakeholders in your community. This quote here at the bottom of the page is from an elementary school teacher. It was on a survey after she completed a summer training on how to use arts integration strategies in her classroom. The summer symposium is a part of my work in the Kennedy Center Partners in Education program. And it's a program that trains teachers on the benefits of using arts integration in their classrooms to better engage learners and bring deeper understanding to core content areas by using the arts to make those lessons more dynamic and meaningful. So at the end of the 2 days, this is the only time I'll read from one of my slides, Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. I have taught for 16 years and I've dreaded going to work the last 2 years. I'm feeling a sense of renewal and joy for teaching that I have been missing. So obviously it's a great quote. As you can tell, it came last summer. So after several years of, the teaching life in the post-COVID world. And so it's great. She enjoyed her experience and the teacher was feeling inspired to start the school year. So you could just let that pass as a great quote, but I'm going to use it as a way to talk about how you tell your story to a variety of different audiences. So first, I focus on who is my audience, and I'm looking for that sweet spot where my core values and their core values line up. So at first I'm going to start with funders, and it may seem like, well, funders, why do we need to talk to, obviously we're convincing them to pay for things, but when you think about, for me, some of my biggest funders are state agencies, and those state agencies receive their funding from the state senators and congressmen that are going to allocate budgets, and then also from school districts themselves, particularly for this project. So for example, with that state agency, I'm going to focus in on that I have a state agency that funds this that is focused on workforce development. I know that is their number one goal. So for them, I'm going to focus on the quality of the training and that it sparks joy for the teachers who attend. For the school district that also funds this project, I am going to ask, or I'm going to use this quote to tell them, because I know they care about the health of the district, the school board members. So that's where we overlap, is I want the teachers to have, a good experience, and they want the teachers to have a good experience. And the fact is that teachers are leaving this field in droves right now. So school boards and superintendents are extremely concerned about teacher retention. So I'm going to really zone in on that when I'm talking to them, because they need to hear that this training will help with teacher retention and that the arts are a possible avenue for building joy and stamina in their workforce. So that's my first category of people, our funders. And then my next category is the leaders. So let the city and state leaders know what you are up to. Invite someone from your local arts council to an attend event. It could be an event where a teacher just like this teacher talks about why they like this work. For me at my work, we host an annual celebration dinner at the end of each school year, and we invite teachers, artists, funders, and local leaders to attend and hear about the work we're doing. Let those leaders know what you are doing by writing letters, inviting them to events, and showing up at their events. You want to be their go-to expert on that topic. You want them to seek you out the next time they are looking for guidance on why the arts matter. Make sure they know who you are and what you do. And finally, your community. Tell the people that you serve exactly and clearly what you do. Take away the mystery. So for them, I'm going to simply say, we train teachers with arts integration, and it makes their experience of teaching better. Talking to funders and existing leaders is great, but you never know who the next leader is, and you want your community to understand deeply what it is that what you do. All right, next slide. So these are my key takeaways. Stay true to your why and connect with others who share your values. You need to know where that overlap is, and you need to focus on that. Number 2, tell your story and know your audience when you do. If you believe in it, they will too. And start where you're at today. It may seem overwhelming, but we all have stories from our work that we're proud of. Start small by telling the people in your community one of your stories. Thank you for having me today, and I look forward to your questions.
Okay, I thought I was unmuted. Thank you so much, Kara. That was a great presentation. Again, I love this idea of transitioning from this broad overview when it comes to advocacy skills that people can employ to narrowing our focus and kind of shifting gears, but still remaining within that advocacy context. So that was awesome. So at this time, I'm going to open it up to Q&A. If anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, raise your hand, or if you'd like to drop your question in the chat, if you don't feel comfortable with necessarily asking via mic, then that's perfectly fine. I can start off by just asking a few questions. I think you all gave really great examples of how you've used some of the advocacy skills that we've discussed. I also just in some of our other webinars, I like this idea of employing our youth, right? This idea that it doesn't have to be necessarily someone who's already, say, working in the arts or of a certain age. Do any of you have any examples of where you've engaged youth and you may have used youth in order to build out an advocacy message to a broader audience?
Yes, we have a lot of high school and college students that we use at the state and national level. Specifically, like we have our advocacy days in Des Moines, which is the capital of Iowa. Our high school students and our college students are some of our most effective advocates because what we are doing now affects them right now. And there's lots of times what I will do is I partner up with them. I say, you're going to give the story. I'll give the boring facts. Let me take care of the boring facts. I'm old. That, they've seen me before. What they want is someone who says, no, this is what it does for me right now. And it changes the tone of the conversation every time. We've even done the same when we were in Washington, D.C., and we would bring a high school student along with us. It works because they speak from what's happening right now. So I think they're some of our best advocates.
Totally agree that students are the best advocates. And another way students could participate in advocacy also is through, for example, performing at boards of education meetings. So whether or not there's a specific decision happening at that meeting, I know we've had groups of students come and do a performance just to keep it on those folks' radar so that they can experience it and remember how important it is, how powerful it is for students to be able to engage in the arts and they can see it firsthand. And we also have one of our partner organizations hosts the Baltimore Youth Arts Advocacy Council, which is made up of high school students. And they go to Annapolis every year. And we also have worked with those individual students to create Advocacy 101 videos. So on our YouTube page, you can go and check out some videos with youth talking directly about kind of, what they wish adults knew and sharing some of their stories. So definitely encourage folks to check that out.
Yeah, we have a letter writing campaign too, where students, after they see a field trip show here, where they will write letters back to us about their experience. And then we use those letters a lot in reporting that we do to funders and local leaders. And then this isn't my idea, but I'm just going to say it because I think it's awesome. I was at a conference last week where a performing arts center had a youth advisory council. And so those kids came together. They were all kids in the performing arts and they gave feedback on like season ideas and what types of shows they would like to see. And then they also had a performance aspect to the group where they could do exactly what Rachel was talking about, where they can go out and perform scenes and monologues and things like that to convince people. So I might steal that idea. So
Yeah, two of the hands-on things that we've done that were very, very effective is we collected student artwork from elementary students throughout the state of Iowa, and then we framed the artwork, and on the back, the student wrote a summary of this is what I learned by doing this piece of artwork, and then putting the art standard on the back as well. And so what we did is we handed that to all the new legislators that were maybe unfamiliar with our work. So as we were talking to them in person, we got to present them with a piece of artwork. And another project we did is we created an advocacy booklet. Iowa, even though we're a small state, has 99 counties and 150 legislators. And so what we did is we collected testimonies from students saying, this is why arts education is important to me. And then we put student artwork in the book, and then we arranged everything by county. So every legislator, when we presented them with the book, looked to the counties they represented and they could see testimony from a constituent, So, and we did that the same, and we brought those books to Washington, D.C. as well. So they made the work of the students made a powerful leave behind for us.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's why I asked that question. I think it's awesome to have youth really be the face, right, of a lot of these policymakers, lawmaking decisions and that sort of thing, and show them in real time, these are your constituents, this is the future of arts education, and how the decisions they're making have a direct impact. So that's awesome. Another question that I have for you all is, what are some emerging trends or issues that you all see in arts education?
You want me to go first? We can go in reverse order. I have been I've been at several conferences recently and talking to a lot of my colleagues, particularly here in the Midwest. A lot of children's theater in particular, which is what I typically program for our school shows, is really driven by children's literature. And our country is experiencing a lot of book banning right now, and it is having a lot of impact on what titles are available, what types of shows we can present. And so there's been a lot of interesting conversation around different states and what that book banning looks like in those states, as well as a lot of my things I program are national tours. And if they can't stop in the Midwest or in the South, it impacts the financial viability of those tours. They're usually in a truck with a set and everything, and they can't just drive from New York to California. So those types of issues are a lot of what we're talking about in the field right now.
Another piece that we're hearing a lot that Kara mentioned in her presentation is teacher recruitment and retention. And so that's definitely something big that we're hearing across the board. In Maryland in particular, we are typically, just across all disciplines, more of an importer of teachers. And so we've been doing a lot of talking and thinking around the pipelines, which are cyclical, right? So there's fewer teachers coming out of higher ed programs ready to teach, in part because of, one way to address that is to strengthen the programs in K-12, but if you have fewer teachers, there's kind of like this cycle nature. So teacher recruitment and retention is a big one. And as part of that, we're seeing an increase in conditionally certified teachers entering the classroom. So fewer people going through the traditional, 4-year university teaching program, but more so folks who are coming in from other careers, which has a great benefit, especially in the arts. If you have folks who have been practicing artists wanting to come into the schools and coming in a conditional certification, there's a great potential there. But there's also a lot of room for improvement in terms of supporting those conditionally certified teachers and making sure that they are ready and equipped to be effective classroom teachers.
Yeah, I'm just going to piggyback on that. We see the same thing as far as a shortage of teachers. It's one of those, I think that's a nationwide thing, but especially in a rural state like Iowa, we have a lot of smaller school districts. So we're trying to address that two ways. One, I briefly mentioned we have a mentoring program that we started in 2006. And really what we do is we concentrate on getting the teachers through their first and second year of of teaching. Lots of times, especially in the fine arts, they're going to be maybe the only teacher of their specific area in their school district or in their building, and they don't have anyone really to talk to. In Iowa, every teacher has to have a mentor, but it's not necessarily a discipline-specific mentor. And so what we have is a program that targets specifically beginning first and second year teachers. We provide professional development. We provide scholarships for them to attend professional conferences and pay professional dues. And then we provide in-person advocacy or in-person mentoring for their first 2 years of teaching at no cost to the local school district. We were funded by a federal grant for 8 years. And then the last during the Obama administration. And then since that time, we've been funded by a matching grant from the Iowa legislature. And the thing that's been interesting there is it really plays well on both sides of the aisle. Because really what we can look at is we can really target our beginning teachers, what they need. And especially now when there's somewhat have to combine areas, like they maybe have to teach band and choir or strings and general music or drama and something else. And we can provide discipline-specific mentors for all of these areas. So, I mean, it's a nationwide problem, but we we are really trying to keep our finger on the pulse of that. Because like last year, they reduced the amount of requirements for fine arts in high schools to stay certified. And we fought that and we lost that battle. But what it was is they couldn't find enough teachers. And so it's going to take a while to solve it. But yeah, it's an ongoing problem, but we're working on it.
Thank you all for your responses. As you were talking specifically about teacher recruitment and retention, I was thinking about the Guild, as part of our advocacy efforts, even looking on a federal level. One of the bills that we did endorse was Alma Adams' HBCU Arts Act. So that was us, recognizing not only is teacher recruitment and retention very important, but also this idea of diversifying the pipeline in terms of the people that are actually serving in arts education. So yeah, I can definitely see that as being an emerging issue as well. My last question for the three of you is, what are ways in school and out of school arts education programs could support one another through their advocacy efforts? And I'll just say this, there seems to be somewhat of a, I wouldn't say delineation, but there's definitely a distinction that I think it's made between in-school and out-of-school arts education programs. That's, again, one of the things that the Guild and in our federal level advocacy efforts, we've really been trying to kind of do away with, just in our conversations with various congressional offices when it comes to the legislation that we endorse and that we're definitely working with offices on. So what is a way or some ways that you think that we can kind of bridge that gap, so to speak, between the in-school and out-of-school advocacy efforts?
I think the first thing is communication. I think first we have to understand that it's not this against each other, but there's this sweet spot in between those two groups. So for example, we work closely with the Iowa Department of Education, the Iowa Arts Council, and Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs. And so with Iowa Department of Education, obviously, I mean, they work with K-12 education and some collegiate education as well, but also being involved, working closely with those are working with organizations that work with working artists in the community, museums, cultural institutions, and communities that provide enrichment or after school or evening activities for students. And so we have to look, there's a sweet spot where those two things can combine so we can share resources, we can share teachers. Also, I think that communication is super, super important. One of the things we've worked on is we've done workshops with like teaching artists to make sure that things are standards-based. It's always a lot easier to connect with after-school enrichment programs for teachers to go to administrators and say, this is a standards-based field trip or whatever. So I think a lot of it is the communication and realizing, no, we all want the same thing. We all want the same thing. Let's find this common ground to move forward.
I'll go too. Or Rachel, you want to? Okay. So I think what strikes me is the need to remove the idea that the arts are fluff, that they're extra, because it feeds in. I mean, convincing arts and culture organizations and tourism boards and things like that, that it's economically viable to have a strong arts ecosystem. Yes, that still takes work, but it is. I think people know that. They know that people go to plays and they go to the opera and they go to the symphony, and that increases tourism dollars in your area. But convincing them that the arts aren't fluff, that they're actually, first of all, arts everywhere. Somebody designed every logo that we see on the screen, those PowerPoints, things like that. The art is literally in every design element all around us. And also that the arts build those skills of innovation and creativity that are what we want for our workforces even outside of the arts. So convincing people that it's this core piece of humanity and not just the thing you do after school for fun. You go to your dance class. I think can help bridge that divide if we see it as integral to our humanity. I'm very lofty in my ideals.
Yeah, and I think again, kind of bringing it back to that big picture of thinking about like, what's the story? Where's the passion? Like, kids who are getting arts in school and after school and through field trips, all of the above, they're getting that, they're tapping into their humanity and they're developing in lots of different ways. And whether that's in a, course class or if that's after school, they're getting those benefits. And I think all of the above contributes to the passion and the story when we're thinking about advocating.
Awesome, thank you. So with that, I am going to conclude the Q&A session, and I will have Quanice come back on and give some closing remarks.
Awesome. Just wanted to check the chat to see if there was any other questions in there before I conclude. So I just want to make sure to thank Cara, Rachel, and Leon for the amazing tips. Please, 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 for those in the audience who are listening, please reach out to any of them who are on the panel, the National Guild, but also every state pretty much almost has an arts advocacy organization. And so one of our partners, the Creative States Coalition, will be at the National Guild Conference helping us with our advocacy efforts on the Hill, but know that there are statewide advocacy organizations that can help support the work that you all do every day. And I just want to thank you all again for taking the time to just join us in this event to learn more. And we're looking forward to seeing you all at future National Guild events. Again, thank you so much for joining us. And please feel free to reach out anytime if you all have any questions. Thank you, Cara, Leon, and Rachel.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And really quick, just to answer a question, it looks like that was in the chat. Yes, the recordings for these sessions will be shared. I believe it'll be made available on the Guild's website. So we will be following up with an actual recording of this webinar. So again, thank you to our amazing speakers. Thank you to everyone who was able to pop in and join us for the webinar. And you all have an amazing rest of your day. See you at conference. Bye.
Bye-bye.